Alright, it's Mark, and let me just make sure this works. Okay, it does. Great. So, got lots of stuff to talk about this week, and so we were just talking in the chat for a while, and so Mr. Gold mentioned Paper Mario, which I never actually looked up before, and let me get rid of this. Okay, so see the image. So here's Paper Mario. You know, it kind of does look like stop motion. It looks like a cutout of some sort of Mario and a three-dimensional background. But it does look kind of almost like stop motion. I wonder if they photographed maybe some kind of printouts of Mario, or some kind of like a, it almost looks like a sticker or something stuck in the video game. That's kind of interesting. I mean, it could be. Maybe it's purely digital, but it does look like it's really in there somehow. So, anyways, bunch of stuff to talk about. Now, first off, it is feedback week. Today is January 16th, and so nobody submitted anything into the feedback area. So I thought what I would do is talk a little bit about what's going on the front page of our site, because that's where the most activity's been. So first off, we have so Pete Storm added a video here which is really educational on a very common topic, which is how do you remove rigs in stop motion. And so I opened it up in a separate window here, and so Peter Ellis kind of goes on. It's a 16-minute video, which I think you guys will enjoy, because you know, I've got an old video on how to do this in Stop Motion Pro, I think 7, before it became Eclipse, and you can use that program, but this is using Premiere Pro. Obviously, this is a much better program, you know, to remove rigs in. And all right, not sure why that happened. Mini player. Oh, that's the biggest I can get that. All right. Well, anyways, so he does kind of make a lot of jokes and things in here to kind of make it entertaining. But the video is really, like I say, it's very informative. It is 16 minutes long, but definitely check it out. So if you want to find it, his channel name is My Animated Life Peter Ellis, and this is called Stop Motion Tutorial: How to Remove a Rig in Premiere Pro. You know, like I say, it's something that you had to have Premiere Pro in there. You had to have a puppet, and as you can see here, there is you know, a rig to be removed. So you had to have all of those things, right? But and also, I guess, well, you don't actually need to have a green screen for this. He's actually just removing the he's making a background plate, which is the original background, and then cutting out the rig. So it is a tedious process, which is, you know, pretty much anything related to stop motion is a bit tedious, but it's really a great tutorial. So also moving forward from there, let me kind of move this here. So Nupkin posted this video, and I mean, I thought it was kind of funny. So he says, here is a short I made. I got questions. What's the best FPS for stop motion, and what do you do for the wire skeletons? I've been using foil. So he's actually using like aluminum foil for the arms and the legs and everything. I'm not really sure exactly how he's getting those to all stick together. Maybe he's using hot glue or some kind of an epoxy or something like that. Yeah, Mr. Gold. And then Evie says, I know that the characters are digital. It wouldn't surprise me if the developers made it look like stop motion with computers. I guess yeah, so with the Paper Mario, maybe so. Yeah, it's really clever, though. I mean, they probably understand that there's a lot of charm. There we go. I wonder if did the other video have theater mode or not? I think some of these videos on YouTube are a little bit glitchy, but anyways. So Rick Hits the Bong is what it's called, and so Rick C137 hits the bong without Morty there to watch him. Season 4321. So so he's using foil. This is interesting, right? So let's just quickly watch this from the beginning. Obviously, this is from Rick and Morty. Hey, Hoser Lou. Alright, so he falls off the table. And so it's really simple. Obviously, he gets a little bit delirious. And things take a turn for the worst. And so he's got some smoke effects in there. We've got some camera moves. We've got, so, I mean, what can we say about this? I think it's really, like, for probably one of his first videos in stop motion, I would say it's pretty good, and it's kind of ambitious and all, with all that's going on with the camera. So I would say that's probably the weakest part of the whole thing, is that the camera is very erratic. And without some sort of a motion control system, it's really hard to get a smooth path of your camera. Now, the editing is also an important thing to take into consideration. So, like when we had this one shot, so he's falling down, which is pretty brief. I mean, it's funny, right? It's kind of funny what happens, but so he falls, and then there's a zoom out, so you can see what happens. I mean, really, there's a lot you can do to, like, the frame rate. The question he had about the frame rate is that what's the best FPS? Now, if you're going to hold the camera, maybe he's holding like an iPhone or something like that, it's going to be really hard to get a smoother motion even if you use like 24 frames per second. Now, I'm not really sure what he used here. It's almost like this is maybe 10 frames per second or something. And there's also portions where the motion is kind of smooth, and then portions where it's kind of erratic. So these are all really, these are common mistakes for beginners. So first off, I would say, try to, like, I can see he's got something back here. It looks like a tripod or something for a camera, which that would be really helpful to use. So I would try to use something that could stabilize the camera. So I would try to use that tripod. That's the first thing. Now, it's not necessarily fun to have a camera that's locked down, but to have some sort of a way of at least making the camera moves smoother would be helpful. So there are ways to do that. One is to attach like a, take some double-sided tape or some kind of even Scotch tape, and you could attach a laser pointer to your camera or your phone, right? And then you could have something to the side that the laser points to, such as a piece of paper or anything that can be drawn on, like a dry erase board. And every time you moved your camera, you could see how far you've moved it. So having some way to measure the distance that your camera's been moving would make a huge difference. So even if you had the same frame rate, you could have a smoother motion. Same with the puppet. So knowing where the puppet is in space. So surface gauges have been invented a long time ago. I guess not invented, but the usage of them was discovered in stop motion during some of the first stop motion films. Even the Willis O'Brien used them, I think, on King Kong. Although his animation was not the smoothest, he had some great gestures in there. So he kind of made up for some of the herky-jerky motion that is well known for King Kong. But the way you would do that is you would take like a piece of clay and then take a piece of wire and stick it in the clay, and then extend that wire out to like the head, of your puppet. And then from there, every time you move the puppet, and of course this requires a locked down camera, like you can't be holding it, because if you are, then you have to kind of go back and forth, and that would make the camera moves even more jerky, right? So again, lock your camera down first in some way, or make a rig that you can use so it can actually slide around on it, even a tabletop. Then use a surface gauge where you put a point on the top of your puppet's head at the minimum, and then every time you move it, make those motions kind of. You could try at first when you're starting out in animation, try to just make the motions, each move, the same distance. That would be good to start out with, but then you want to learn like easing in, easing out, which is to make smaller moves at the beginning of your move, and then wider moves at the center of the move, and then less, closer moves together at the end of your action. So that's pretty simple stuff that you would learn in any kind of animation class or animation book. Very simple things, but taking the time and sort of getting your mind in that mindset where you can do that and really focus on things and try and figure out where things are in space. That comes with time and patience and practice. So, I would say just keep at it, and so far it's like a little funny animation, and the point is, you made the point, and you got your point across. I guess you could say that maybe you should not be smoking. I don't know. If people smoke and that's how they end up, probably not a good idea. But yeah, it's a good little short film. Some of my first animations too were all gore and everything. Like my Teddy Bear's Mistake film, where skeleton bites off the teddy bear's head and eats it. So it's kind of funny to see these kind of films where everybody's, repeating what everybody else has done in a way, which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool. So anyways, I guess what else is there to talk about? So there was a question like, what Dot24 asked, like, what is your favorite stop motion software, essentially, and Axel says Dragon Frame, and Metal Mad Cat says if you can do anything without the best, I guess then you are ready for anything. So if you're looking for free software, of course, Heron Animation, Heron, is free. That's always good to try stop motion with. So Ron says, I think the bong may be a problem for the character and the animator. No, it's possible. Depends what was in there. Oh, okay. So I didn't notice Mr. Gold was leaving, but see you later, Mr. Gold. So, so moving forward, there are some other things I want to talk about tonight. So I'm going to close this up. That does it for our webpage. Just an overview of what's been going on. And so tonight, I did want to talk a bit about sculpting, because sculpting is something that we should probably revisit at least once every few months, because it is really central and integral to stop motion. And this goes for if you're making like a puppet out of wood. It's probably a good idea to learn how to carve the wood, how to master woodworking as much as you can. If you're using clay puppets, or if you're sculpting a clay character to make a mold of for making in foam latex or silicone, it all comes back to pretty much the fundamentals of how to shape different materials. And there's waxes, there's clays, there's putty. Don Carlson has something called puppet putty, which is actually an awesome material, which I found different uses already for that. But there's an online forum called the Shiflett Brothers Sculpting Forum, and they used to have, and maybe they still have it, they had a forum that was sort of on their own website. I think it was like shiflettbrothers.com, or maybe it was something similar to that, which had tons of members. And then, of course, with Facebook kind of, everybody went there. So they got all their members to go over to Facebook, and it's a pretty active group where people post just about every day. Like this person posted 54 minutes ago, this person 5 hours ago, 11 hours ago, so at least a few posts every day, right? And they post a lot of photos of what they've been up to. A lot of times they post tips. A lot of times people will ask questions. This was a, whoops, no. This was a live broadcast where somebody's using Primo to sculpt with. I find a lot of people like to use Primo and Sculpey. It's good for certain things. It's good for, like, some people. One person that I saw was sculpting a full-size zombie head in Sculpey, and to me, that's a bad use of polymer clay. It's great for small stuff, especially for stop-motion puppets. Like this person is sculpting a face, and looks like they're putting some eyeballs in there. And they sculpt pretty fast. Looks like this is 1 hour and 29 minutes, and they're kind of getting the nose and the eyes in there. So some things to say about this is that, first off, if you're working on a film and you need some inspiration and ideas, this is a great place to go. And I actually visit this particular forum on Facebook probably once a day, just because it's so much fun to see what people are creating and the different characters and whatnot. And a lot of it will translate into what you can do with stop motion, of course, because it's it's pretty much, like I say, it's integral. Somebody's posting a science article, which is kind of so confirming why we should sculpt more. So here's a Donald Trump head made for a museum. Here is looks like somebody's posting some tips. Low ear attachment is masculine, so are big eyes, cheekbones, and bushy eyebrows. So a lot of theory about sculpting, looks like. I don't know about this one. I don't know if I agree with that, but females will have ears attaching at or slightly below ear level. Real men's ears are attached noticeably below the eye level. Well, these are a lot of with the number of heads that I've sculpted, that's probably semi-true, but not always. But anyway, so we got Tim Bruckner posted some of these, which are looks like a mermaid. He's an awesome sculptor, and he actually paints all these, and he's got some, his abilities are just, every time he posts something new, it just blows me away. And somebody posted an alien sculpture on their car, But this is sort of similar to what you'd see. This is from Dan Perez, so this is very stop motion-y here for sure. Which, by the way, somebody said that Beetlejuice is having another Beetlejuice Part 2. So I don't know if there's going to be stop motion in that, but if you guys recall in Beetlejuice, and I recognize the snake here on Dan Perez's on his icon or avatar there, but maybe they'll have stop motion in that. I'm not really sure. So we have some Asian, Japanimation characters, maybe. Not really sure. Different sculpting tools people are making. This is some sort of, looks like a switchblade type tool, right? Folds up, and people are talking about that. So there's just a lot to look at. Some of these great characters, and this one here looks like it's pretty rough, but looks like he's working in the forms, which are really great looking so far. So like I say, really inspirational. Got full-size heads. We've got miniature necromancer. That's awesome. I think this is, I'm not sure if he's making a necromancer from the Doom game, but maybe not. And we've got says it's his first sculpt. So many people say that. I don't believe it. Anyway, but it's like an orangutan kind of a carrot or monkey, or not too sure exactly. It's like an orangutan. So got some action figures. can go on and on forever, you know. So you can just scroll on and just find out things that are, interesting and helpful for your own characters. And this person was actually on the Chiflet Brothers, and they posted, if you recall, the very first picture I was showing there was a some sort of lizard creature, and I clicked on the link, and this particular person is in Hong Kong. And yes, Beetlejuice 2. I'm not really sure if it's true. It seems to be, though. You can sort of see the... see if I can zoom in. The detail on this particular character. And this kind of gets into... I'm not sure if this was digitally sculpted and 3D printed, but I suspect that this one might be. You can see we've got like these different, like this looks like a baby one or something, but this would make some awesome stop motion puppet. Here's the dragon. So I really wish that people would turn these into puppets and animate them, because you could literally, mold and cast this and stick an armature in there, and this would be one of the most awesome puppets. Yeah, you're right, Hoserloo. It's like, I think people just do that for the likes. They're like, oh, if I say it's my first, they're gonna give me lots of likes and I'll be happier for that or something. It's just kind of weird, but this is such a cool character. So I imagine, I don't know really. I don't understand like the it says the evolution of dragons. So I guess maybe this is the baby, and then it grows up a little bit, and then it sprouts wings, perhaps. Because if you look at their tails, they're all similar. And okay, so this does kind of answer my question as if this was 3D printed, and this is definitely a digital sculpture. So yes, it is. And that brings me into digital to physical sculptures, and that's kind of what people are doing these days. And I don't know if really, you can't really say all stop motion animators are doing this, because a lot of people still sculpt traditionally, like of course like Ron Cole here in the chat. I don't think he sculpts digitally at all. Still makes awesome looking characters, but digital is used a lot more often. And so if you're out there interested in trying to sculpt digitally, of course, it's something that can be extremely expensive, because I think Maya is, it's like over $1,000 for something like that. But there's always programs like Blender. So Blender 3D is a free program which you can sculpt in, as well as Sculptress. Let's see here. So Evie says there's always 1,000 drawings and sculpts before the first attempt. Yeah, definitely. And Kiona B says, so it's always sculpt, then mold, then armatures, yes? So technically, no. Now with what I'm going to describe here with digital, you have to create an armature after the fact. And that's kind of the newer way to do things, but it's also not as good to do it that way. So you want to, in general, you want to try and make your design on paper. And the traditional way is, once you have your design on paper, you will essentially you go into the center of your sketch, let's say the legs, the torso, the arms, the neck, the head, and you can outline where your armature needs to be, and then take measurements off of that. As long as the drawing is in full scale. So if you get a piece of just plain old 8.5 by 11 inch paper, you can draw a front view of your puppet and then a side view, and you can make that draw it at the actual size that you want to make it. And most puppets, just on average, are like 8.5 inches tall, average. So you would pretty much want to make your armature, make it out of wire, or if you want to make it much nicer, you can either buy like an armature kit with ball and socket parts, or you can even make your own ball and socket parts. So there's just a lot of ways to do that. But after you make your armature, you would wrap it up with, for example, some tape or plastic wrap or something to protect it from the oils. especially if it's a ball and socket armature, because if the oils get in there, it becomes loose. So once you've got that, you take your puppet putty or Roma clay or Van Eyck clay or whatever you want to use to sculpt your character, and then you sculpt right on the armature, and then that way you know that the armature will definitely fit inside of your mold, because you make the mold right after that. Right? And then when you pull the mold apart, then you take the clay out, then you take the armature out of the clay, so you actually destroy your sculpture, and then you put your armature into the mold, and then it's a perfect fit. But what they're doing now with Kubo at Leica, and I imagine, wow, they're probably doing this in a lot of different studios, but they're doing it digitally, right? So it makes things a lot harder, and that's one of the impediments of doing things digitally. So for example, this program is Sculptress. You could sculpt in that. You can sculpt in Blender. You can use ZBrush. You could use Maya. Trying to think of any other. There's I think Mudbox is another digital program you can use to sculpt with. And then once you do that, you have to 3D print it. So Ron is saying every time stop motion crosses paths with digital anything, stop motion is compromised on a suicide mission. A lot of people I noticed are commenting on Kubo and the Two Strings that it looks so much like it's CG because it's kind of clean. It just does have that digital edge to it that you can recognize, and you can't really tell in some instances that it is actually stop motion. And so I know Aardman Animations, they have not really done, to my understanding, the same level of this process where you're sculpting digitally. They pretty much stick to hand sculpting, and then they make replacements and stuff. And so I believe they have done some stuff using this digital process, but it's not as intensive as what Kubo has done. And or Leica, and Leica has done a lot of stuff that, strangely, they don't actually 3D print everything, but where your focus is on the character is mostly on the face and the expressions. So where 3D printing excels in stop motion and making stuff digitally is the ability to make parts which are both organic and faceted, which means you can have perfect square shapes, circles. Essentially what you can make are Lego pieces digitally at the same time as you have, if I can explain this simply, if you were to do it in clay, you could take a piece of clay and make the front of a face, and then take a Lego brick and push it into the front of the face, and then mold that, and then cast it in plastic, and then take that frontal face with the Lego brick that's been cast on it, and push that into another piece of clay, which is like a ball, and then the face can attach because it can lock in place, right? So you make a mold of that ball, and you've got two plastic pieces that you've cast that fit into each other, right? So it's kind of taking an engineering aspect with all these hard-edged, faceted pieces, and combining it with the sculptural process of making a face which is organic, has expressions and things like that. And the benefit to this is that if you guys have ever watched, let me do something real quick here for you guys before I move forward. I'm just going to look something up. So I want to kind of give you guys an example here, if I can find a photo first. Well, I'm not sure if I can. And I've actually got a Miss Spider replacement face from James and the Giant Peach, which I'd love to show you guys right now, because it would kind of. Oh man. Let me do this. This is probably the best I can do, and I don't really have a lot of examples. Oh man, this is one of my own videos. Evidently I posted this in 2008, and Completely forgot that I even posted this. Alright, well, let me show you guys what I'm looking at. This was actually, I think Webster Colcord animated all of these things. So, okay, so this is very low quality. I can't make the quality better. This is the extent of it. This is the quality that we had in 2008. But Mrs. Spider had these replacement faces, okay? Now, Mrs. Spider is, so you can see where her hair is, and you can see this sort of black outline around her face. And that outline is where her face pops off. And the face is very thin. So what they would do is they would have the eyes attached to the head on the inside of the skull part. They had the thin replacement faces, and then they would have what looks like a figure 8 kind of a piece of metal that was embedded into the face, and then the head has a magnet, so the replacement faces could pop off and get popped back on. And so every time the face was, I think she's got like a growling sort of face here, and then the mouth closes, and then there's also the eyebrows and so forth. All of that stuff was taken off and replaced as a series of heads which were numbered and put in like a box which had little separators and stuff. Really super complicated process. And the other problem is that to sculpt each of the replacement faces takes a very long time. And so what the production, what Henry Selick was trying to think when he was doing this was he wanted to make it super simple for animators. And that, of course, time is money, and of course making it simple is something which, has a cost to benefit ratio. It's all business. So they had to make these replacement faces. And so digitally speaking, this process is a lot quicker to do with 3D printing today than trying to make each and then, every single individual face one by one by hand, right? So that's really what they're trying to do, and it's more or less they're trying to save money. They're trying to do it quick. They want to make it simple for the animators. Corpse Bride. Who did Corpse Bride? I'm trying to remember now. The guy that was friends with Tim Burton, the animation director. I can see his face, but I can't remember now. Let's see here. Let's find out. It's been too many years now. Now the faces you're talking about on Corpse Bride, though, of course, are different. Okay, they did not use replacement faces for that. So yeah, it was Leica and Warner Brothers, and Mike Johnson was the director. I could not remember his name, but yeah, they did an awesome job on that. So, but what they did with that was they had a kind of clockwork. Let's see here. Let's do this. Corpse Bride. Mechanical head. And look at images. All right. So this. Oh, course it's going to be small, right? So you can kind of see here anyway. They had these mechanisms that attach to a silicone face, and they would turn these little knobs inside of their heads with a hex wrench or a little hex key wrench, and that would turn the gears, and then the jaw would open up and close. So that's a completely different process, okay, than the replacement faces. So here's some replacement faces by Leica, and you can see what they've done is they've inserted these pieces of metal into the head, and these might actually be magnets. They kind of look like they're magnets, but these would attach to the underskull. So digitally speaking, it's much easier to do that if that's the style you're after. So let me see here. So Ken is saying, I thought Frankenweenie was better. Yeah, Frankenweenie is actually a great classic. I love that film. So Ron says Corpse Bride was my style, mechanical stop motion puppet film. And Omar says Corpse Bride also has 3D digital effects and animations. They did. Not really super heavy on it, but Leica uses a lot more now, I think, than back then. Aardman also uses digital effects. In fact, I think we mentioned the last time how they're using digital for like the audiences and the stadiums and all that kind of stuff. And hi Ben, welcome to the show. And Evie says Missing Link looks too generic for me. But anyways, so making stuff in 3D is possible, and you can do it for free using different software. Sculptress is a good program to use because it's very easy to sculpt with and it's free. And you can use any of the, if you want to export OBJ files from Sculptress, I believe you can. And then you can import that into other programs to do the hard edge modeling and combine the two. So that's where you get your replacement face system. And there's also some things you can use which are kind of interesting, which I just recently found out about this, I guess yesterday. They have these devices, they're called 3D mouses, and this one here is the 3D Connection Space Mouse. And the way that these things work is you can use a mouse and you can use this device and you can essentially turn stuff in 3D for sculpting. Sadly, I found out that this does not work with ZBrush, but it does work, I believe, with Blender. So this kind of allows you to have a more tactile way of sculpting somewhat within 3D for the purposes of stop motion. And so you can see here how he's just moving things back and forth, and you can twist it, you can push it down, you can push it up. So it's much more intuitive than trying to do this with a mouse and using like keys on your keyboard or something like that. Yeah, this is really, it's, some people like this process better than others, so really it's, there's no real wrong or right way to do stop motion. Of course, the end goal is to have a storytelling, to complete your story and to get that across to people, and there's just so many different ways to do it now, and so many people are doing this kind of mixed media things like this. So I do believe there should be a balance, though, and I do agree with what Ron is saying with, if things go too far digitally, it just kind of takes the tactile aspect out of it. So Jan Svankmajer would never use digital, I don't think, or Starovich, or O'Brien. I don't know if O'Brien would go for it or not. Maybe for armature making. Like Marcel Delgado might have thought it was really cool. Armature designing is actually we're on the cusp of having armatures designed in 3D, and I'm talking ball and socket ones, because you can actually 3D print parts now that are in bronze, brass, aluminum. I think there's just all kinds of different metals that they're somehow able to do that with 3D printing. So we'll see about that. So Ron says the more that's done in front of the lens for real gets my respect. And Grandview says comparing Missing Link to Coraline, you can see what I mean in terms of special effects. And Hoserlu says, I like both of them, but would put Coraline on top of the Leica list. Yeah, Coraline was the first 3D printed replacement face stop motion feature. And I know that there was some controversy when that first came out, because it was the first time we'd ever seen something like that, and it did appear to be somewhat like CG, at least to me. So let's see here. Yeah, Paranorman was really great. Yeah, you could actually make, depending on the puppet you're making, if it's a silicone puppet, you can make an armature for the face, which is what we were just showing before. So like the Corpse Bride, This, let me see if this is, or this might be a video. Let's just quickly look here, and you can see what they've done and how it works. And I hate Pinterest. All right. I mean, this is kind of cool, but Pinterest by itself is kind of a crappy way to view images, in my opinion. Let me just see if we can get this to work. And we can't. Alright, yeah, I hate Pinterest. Alright, this should work here. Let's see. Probably gonna get a copyright strike just for showing this, but let's try to find the part where the faces are shown. There we go. Alright. This is McKinnon and Saunders. I forget if this is McKinnon or Saunders. I've never met them or anything or worked with them, but they're really well known in the UK. So you can see here what they're doing. They're just turning some dials, right? And then you get a smile. And this is really a fantastic trick. You know, just you're sticking something inside of the character's ear to get that, and you're getting expression and whatnot from it. And it's very subtle. So you're able to really dial in an expression in a subtle way, which is usually really hard to do. So if this was a clay face and you're trying to sculpt it by hand, trying to get the mouth to open just ever so slightly, that's not usually too hard to do. But this is a very precise way, you know, because we're talking about you know, the number of threads per inch on the screw, or how many times the let's see here. You know, so how many rotations the gear makes, and so forth. It's just really great. So I mean, it is an awesome process, but it's almost out of the realm of possibility for most people to do. I never really realized they made the hair that nice. Wow. So intricate. See if there's any other... I think that might have been the only demonstration for the face. Let me just go forward here. I believe it is, actually. But here you can see where they're actually sticking these silicone faces onto the heads and applying them. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, their faces are silicone. I'm not sure if it's going to be dragon skin or what. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, it's just astounding though. Yep, it is silicone. Oh, the puppets themselves. So the puppets are a combination of silicone as well as actual fabric. So they used really fine wire in this bridal veil, for example, and this is actual real fabric. Yeah, real materials inside there. So let's see. So then we talked a bit about the software, and then so we talked about this, which is the 3D mouse, which is a helpful way to sculpt within the computer. And the other way to sculpt, and the most affordable way, is to use a Huion tablet. And this is best used for like ZBrush and Sculptress, where you're literally using the pen to make strokes on the digital clay. Wacom tablets are way overpriced, but these are super cheap. And are you? Well, silicone is rubber. It is a rubber product. So you're saying like it looks like foam latex? Maybe it is. I don't know. But I know the faces are definitely silicone. And Evie says, "I love when they use real materials." Yeah, I mean that's kind of what gives stop motion its charm, and that's what a lot of people do like. So when it comes to actually materializing your your actual digital sculptures, there's a lot of different ways to do that. So Shapeways is of course a company which has been around for, I'm gonna say, at least like 3 years, maybe 4 years, maybe even longer. So shapeways.com is a place that will actually 3D print your stuff. And I can't remember if Alba, what did she use? Who did she use? Was it them or somebody else? There's a few different companies, but if you're wanting to make three-dimensional faces yourself to print, the most the least expensive but best option, if you want to own your own 3D printer, if you're actually making a production, so this means you'd have to have a budget, is the Formlabs Form 2. And so this is like a resin-based 3D printer, and it's almost plug and play. It's very you have to worry about, of course, the chemicals, which are toxic to a degree. Of course, we're talking about resins, which are industrial chemical based liquids, which are laid into a bed, and then the bed. Let me see if they show. Well, I don't know if they have any videos here. But the way it works is that the resin has a UV curing ability, which means that the light inside, which is so here you can see here this is stereolithography, SLA printing, right? So there's a really powerful laser which shines on these little mirrors, and the mirrors then rotate using stepper motors, and they move precisely, so precisely that you get like down to the uh, tenth of a millimeter thickness of a layer per layer, I think. Let me see if they actually have any. Let me see. So they're saying you can make silicone molds and things, but I'm not sure where the heck they have examples. Let's see here. Well, these are just tips. Well, let's go to model making. It might be in here if they've actually got photos of examples of the characters that they made. But see if I can click on this one. Well, you can kind of see it here. Let me try to expand this, if possible. There we go. So you can see kind of the detail that you can get from it. It's really, really good. But I think these cost in excess of like $7,000 or something like that. Plus the resin, plus you have to clean things, and plus there are parts in there that have to be replaced, such as the bed inside, which tends to fog up. But it's a really good thing for an actual production company to use. So Ken says, if you ask me, the most affordable way to sculpt is with clay and with your own hands. That's right. It absolutely is. These are more, complicated ways of doing things, require, in some cases a team and a lot of expertise. But this is what you're going to see in films, and especially features. And Ron says foam latex is good, but it wrinkles too much. And Grandview says, since there was nothing in Feedback Week, I posted a shorthand animation using reference words into the forums. Okay. Let me bring that up real quick, and we'll check it out. Do this first. But anyways, hopefully you guys learned a little bit about the process of creating. I'm gonna open this up here first. Check out Grandview's animation. But hopefully you guys find that kind of at least interesting on how it's done, and Yeah, I do like to revisit sculpting as often as possible because people really should at least try to master the basics to where you can make a character with an expressive face. At least that. That's really important. So, anyways, let's check out Grandview's workshops animation. So before I do that, let's check out what he says. So he says 34 frames played in 30 frames per second. Whoa, first time on this channel. This was live streamed in front of 2 people, and I think it turned out pretty good. What do you guys think? I'll be starting the Halloween animation soon. I still need to write the script, so hopefully I finish that soon. This is really short, but my promise is at least 1 animation every month. So he's using the Canon Rebel T1i with an 18 to 55 millimeter lens and 15-inch tripod, liquid latex, that's pretty cool, and Sculpey 3 polymer clay. So let's check it out here. Oh, okay. I would say that so you've created the hands, and it's made from rubber. Let's go back. So we probably have, I'm imagining it's wire inside there. Otherwise you couldn't do this. But, let's go back. Cool. So, so Grandview says, keep in mind this was last year in August. Yeah, this is it's pretty basic. It's obviously less than a second long, but it's a good experiment and a good test to see how things work. So if I were you, like if I made this hand, I would try to examine, first off, is it going to be a focal point? So, for example, is your character going to be seen with hands that are made this way? And what are they going to do? Like, is there, is it going to matter if they're a little bit rough, or do they have to be really super clean? Because hands are really important on a puppet. In fact, when you have a character talk, most of the time they are, using their hands as a way to express what they're saying. And it's very important to make a point with them. No pun intended, because he is pointing his finger now, or your hand is. But are there any problems with the wire? So a test like this, you can really learn a lot. Like, does it hold its position the way I want? Is there memory in there? So, for example, if you use aluminum wire, you might bend the finger, but it might bend back a little bit. You might ask yourself, if the hand is large, can I use, for example, ball and socket parts? You might try to use different kinds of wire, like copper, steel, aluminum, brass are all possible. Well, actually, brass you couldn't use. I mean, you could, but your rubber might not cure properly, so you might want to omit that as a possibility. But see what the difference is and see what you like most. Most people use aluminum wire, but like if you watch Nightmare Before Christmas, steel was used a lot for the hands, for like Jack Skellington. It was actually steel wire, which you wouldn't really think that they would use that, but that is what they used. So Evie says you should make the video slower, speed to see things better. Yeah, I'm just kind of flipping through the frames now here, but if you were just to play it straight ahead, yeah. But pretty good. I would say this is a nice little hand, like for a simple puppet. Very cool. So how did you make it, Grammy? Did you make a mold, or did you just kind of layer up the latex over wire? Or did you make it in clay and then cover the polymer clay with the latex and let it dry? I'm kind of curious. So Ron says, I made Isomer use his hands constantly. Italian. Yep. And so Ron says, steel is best for fingers. Yeah. Some people like steel. Some people like aluminum. When I have clay hands, I don't use anything. I just use the clay. So for me, it's kind of... but I had to do a lot of cleaning up. That's the bad part. Because with clay, a lot of times the clay fingers will crack. So like where the knuckles are here, you can see how it's really stretching your rubber hand out. And so clay doesn't stretch. It kind of does a little bit, of course, but it will usually crack and then compress along the part where the crease is, So like in this part here, you'd have a lot of compression, and then you'd have stretching, and you're constantly trying to fix your hands. It's not always a fun process, to be honest, but I think the look of it looks kind of nice. But so Grandview says, I layered the latex over a skeletal bone structure made of floral wire. That's pretty smart. Floral wire actually works pretty good. And Ken Tyner says, I don't like using wire in my clay hands. Yeah, I mean, some beginners usually find that out when they experiment, kind of like what Grandview's doing here. You experiment and you see what works, what doesn't work. And a lot of times the wire, especially if it's stiff, your clay will sort of, you'll push the finger to make a fist or point the finger up from a downward position or something. And because the wire might be stiff, you're pressing the clay into the stiff wire, and the clay tends to just smush, from the force it takes to bend it. So that's always a bad thing, right? I mean, and you have to, of course, re-sculpt the finger or whatever, each time. But I like the way it moves, And, some people are really sticklers for perfection. But, in stop motion, somehow when things are more rough, to me, it just looks neat that way. So, let's see. So, Randy Boyum says, I don't use wire in hands either. I use soft Sculpey for hand movements. And then bake the hand when it needs to pick up something. So it gives it some rigidity. That's pretty smart. That's a really good idea. That's the first time I've heard that trick, but that's something that, I can see definitely doing that myself. That's what's so cool about talking to you guys. I always learn new things. Yeah, so I know Will Vinton did a lot of that too, but I never heard it for fingers, but for the arms and stuff of their clay characters, they would sometimes take like the forearm section and bake that out of Sculpey. And then they would add, Van Aken in the parts that bend, and it would just require less cleaning up by the animators. So mostly the cleanup part is where the creases are. Anyway, thank you, Grandview, for sharing this. And okay, I am subscribed. I'm just making sure. I couldn't remember if I subscribed to your channel already. But so also he says, I want to keep this channel for all ages to watch. So any comments, including foul language, cyberbullying, of course, will be removed. But so he's using this liquid latex. So let's open this up and see what it is. So it's Mold Builder. So this is a pretty popular material. In fact, when I was like 18 years old, they had this the same kind of material. And one of my friends used cotton and this, as well as acrylic paints. He would mix acrylics in with the rubber, I believe, and he made these puppets from cotton and rubber buildup, which, it wasn't really that great, but back then this was like, wow, this was so awesome to find and experiment with, and you felt like you were like Tom Savini or somebody, or somebody like in Hollywood that use this stuff, and all your friends, you'd show them how you're making stuff, and they're like, "What the heck is that?" It's kind of brings back memories of when I was younger, messing with it. But anyways, guys, it is 9 o'clock, so it does conclude our show. And I want to thank everybody for stopping in and chatting and just sharing your work and asking questions and all. It's always a lot of fun. So let's see. So Gravview says, do you currently work or have experience working in a stop motion studio? Well, I'm just working on the Bad Apples project every other week now. Trying to move that forward, but I know that it's kind of boring for you guys to watch because it's mostly like Photoshop editing and stuff. So, I'm still going to continue with that, but right now I'm doing work for a museum. So I've got actually a few different clients, but a museum project, which is I'll just quickly show you guys what I have been up to. So I sculpted all these characters for Batman 66 display. I think this one is, I forget, this is for the Hollywood Museum in Hollywood, or if this is in New Jersey. I can't remember now. But I sculpted all these characters, and so it's it's not stop motion, but it's creating characters. And the last one I did was Earth the Kit, and so this is how she came out. So you can kind of see. So I am doing a lot of creative stuff, but because of making money, this is what I'm doing as opposed to. So it's digital. So I do use the digital processes only because it's a lot more accurate than doing it by hand, believe it or not, because of the way that reference is used in ZBrush. And that would be another topic for another day to explain how to do all that stuff. But so I did that, and I did like Julie Newmar, and let's see, Yvonne Craig. People seem to really like this one. But so this is painted by a guy named David Costa from this company called Dash and Dazzle, and he puts in the fake eyes and stuff like that. And then they made her into a display, and this is in a permanent display in Hollywood, so it's kind of fun. Oh, see you later, Weebies. Actually, I didn't know he was here. So anyway, guys, that does conclude our show for tonight. Again, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you all next week. See you later.